Okay, let's dive right into this. Whether you're a frustrated parent at your wit's end or an exhausted teenager running on fumes, I want you to hear this loud and clear right off the bat. Your teenager isn't lazy. Seriously, they're not just being dramatic when they say they literally cannot fall asleep before midnight, and they definitely aren't choosing to sleepwalk through that first period class every morning. What's actually happening here is that the teenage brain is running on a completely different biological clock than an adult's. Science can now measure this exact timing, and as we're going to see throughout this explainer, this is absolutely not something that sheer willpower or just having a good attitude can magically override. This brings us to the core friction happening in households literally all over the world right now. Why can't teenagers fall asleep? If you're a teenager, you know this exact feeling, right? You're lying there wide awake at 11 p.m., staring at the ceiling, contemplating the meaning of life, feeling completely alert even though you know you have to be up in, maybe 7 hours? And if you're a parent, well, you've probably stood in that bedroom doorway and said, just go to bed earlier, more times than you can possibly count. You offer that advice, you genuinely mean it with all your heart, and then you just watch it fail, night after night after night.
Look, this midnight struggle is a completely shared reality. But here's the part that almost nobody explains clearly. This is not a scheduling problem, it is biology. We have to completely reframe how we look at this whole situation. The inability to sleep at 9 or 10 p.m., it isn't a behavioral issue, it's not defiance, and it isn't just some bad habit that needs breaking. It is a measurable physiological shift that is actually happening inside the human body.
But hey, before we get into the hard science of exactly how that biological shift works, let's just take a breath. We're going to step away from the nightly arguments for a minute and simply create a slower, quieter space to actually think. Let's figure out the real why behind the friction we're experiencing every single day. All right, let's start with the VIP of this entire process, melatonin. You've probably heard of it. It's the hormone that signals to your body that it's time to sleep. It's basically the chemical messenger that tells your brain, hey, time to wind down. But here is the absolutely crucial piece of the puzzle. During puberty, the body's internal clock genuinely shifts, and that fundamentally changes how, and more importantly, when, this crucial sleep hormone is released into the bloodstream.
Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is the sheer staggering contrast in timelines. This is our big aha moment. For a young child, melatonin starts releasing into the body around 8 p.m., but for a teenager, that exact same process is delayed by roughly 2 to 3 whole hours. The hormone release doesn't even begin until close to 11 p.m. I mean, this one fact explains so much of the friction we experience.
Let's break that down just to be absolutely clear. If we're looking at, say, a 10-year-old child, their brain starts producing that sleep-inducing melatonin right around 8 p.m. The signal happens nice and early in the evening, their body starts winding down perfectly in sync with a standard early-to-bed routine. It feels totally natural for them to go to sleep because their biology is heavily prompting them to do exactly that.
But then, puberty hits, and suddenly, we are looking at 11 p.m. The teenage brain often doesn't even begin producing melatonin until this incredibly late hour. And not only does it start later, but the brain just keeps producing it well into the next morning. It's a completely jarring contrast. Imagine trying to force your own body to sleep 3 full hours before it's received any chemical signal to do so. That's exactly what a teenager is experiencing when they're told to go to sleep at 8 or 9 p.m. It would literally be like someone forcing an adult to go to sleep at 5 in the afternoon. Just impossible. And you know what? This delay is a universal biological shift. It is beautifully consistent across completely different human cultures worldwide. So no, it's not about modern laziness. In fact, this exact same delay in sleep timing is observed in other mammals going through puberty too. Your teenager's body is biologically, scientifically, and universally just not ready for sleep, the time you probably want them to be. It's an evolutionary reality, guys, not a lack of discipline.
But here is where this fascinating little biological quirk turns into a full-blown crisis. Despite their internal clocks shifting so heavily into the night, teenagers still biologically need 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night to function healthily. Their bodies demand a massive amount of rest to support all that rapid growth and intense brain development happening during these years.
So when you actually lay out this timeline, the problem becomes glaringly obvious. If a teenager's body only just begins to feel sleepy at 11 p.m., but society demands they wake up at 6:30 a.m. for school, well, the math simply doesn't work. We've basically built school start times around a schedule that assumes everyone's clock works exactly like a fully grown adult's. By doing this, we are asking teenagers to function on a structural sleep deficit almost every single day of their lives. It's a systemic problem, not a personal failing.
And of course, the modern world just has to go and compound this structural deficit, right? Evening phone and screen use makes this entire situation so much worse. The blue light emitted by our devices actually delays melatonin release even further. So you take a biological clock that's naturally pushed back to 11 p.m., you add the blue light from a smartphone while they're lying in bed, and you're basically pushing that internal clock even deeper into the early hours of the morning. It's a double whammy.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real cost of all that chronic sleep loss. Consistent sleep deprivation during adolescence is linked directly to worse mood regulation, much slower reaction times, weaker memory consolidation, and a significantly harder time managing stress. Now, to be clear, we aren't saying sleep loss directly causes specific mental health disorders here. What we are looking at is daily life simply becoming much, much harder to navigate. A tired teenage brain isn't just sluggish, it's actively trying to operate with fundamentally weakened abilities.
Ultimately, a sleep-deprived teen is working with a meaningfully different set of tools than a well-rested one. And just think about the timing of all this. This increased difficulty, this dulling of their cognitive and emotional tools is happening during the exact years when high school, complex social relationships, and figuring out their own identity are demanding the absolute most from them. We are literally sending them into the most challenging years of their development without the basic tools they need to succeed.
So how do we actually fix this? Well, you can't force an internal clock to just shift overnight, but you can work with it instead of against it. For the teens watching, keeping a consistent wake time, yes, even on weekends, helps incredibly. Why? Because your body responds to a steady rhythm rather than just total hours slept. And dimming your screens an hour before bed is absolutely crucial to stop that blue light from delaying your melatonin any further. Now, for the parents watching, the research overwhelmingly supports advocating for later school start times. It's one of the most effective structural fixes we have available, and frankly, it's a medical necessity, not just a convenience for teenagers. By really taking the information in this explainer to heart, we get to completely change the dynamic at home. We get to move away from treating this like a discipline problem, full of frustration and late-night arguments, and move towards actually understanding the biology. It transforms a nightly behavioral conflict into a collaborative team effort, parents and teens working together to manage a shared biological reality. I want to leave you with a quick question to answer down in the comments. Whether you're answering for yourself as a teenager or answering as a parent about your teenager, what time do you actually fall asleep versus the time you're expected to?